Back at it again. This is Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Full spoilers ahead. Just came out. If you have not seen this movie, don't watch this podcast. Don't listen to it because we're going to spoil it and it takes us fun out of it. So we're going in. We got guests. It's going to be a great time. We promised you guys some amazing guests for this episode, and we hella delivered. So be ready because the Two Black Nerds podcast is with us.
What's good?
What's going on, y'all?
Let's go. Thank you guys for coming on. We are so excited. So just to give the audience a glimpse into your podcast and your life, just explain what a little bit about your podcast.
Sure. Well, appreciate you guys for having us on. Really excited to talk about this movie today. But we're both from Two Black Nerds, which is obviously a podcast as well. And we're across all major podcast platforms. We talk about movies, TV, games, anime, anything we can, sort of fit within a weekly episode. We try to get to it and talk about it, but we've been doing it for a few years now, and definitely for these big comic book movies, we love to talk about all the details, all the ins and outs, and really dive deep. So we find ourselves talking about sort of these bigger movies multiple times, especially within the frame of when it comes out. So can't wait to dive in today and talk about Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah, I am excited. So if you guys have not checked the Two Black Nerds out yet, they got some really good stuff. They're on Instagram. They're obviously Spotify, all that stuff. So just go check them out. They're really good. Deliver good content. I will preface this before we go any further. If you guys did not watch our massive Marvel trivia that we had with all these podcasts, we are with the reigning winner, Dez. He defeated me. I was so sad. I had champagne, ready to just, let's go. But it didn't happen. So it's fine. It's fine. But it was really fun. So this guy knows his stuff.
Yes, sir.
And
it was.
I'll be ready next time.
It was a good match, man. It was a good competition.
I'll be ready next time.
It was hard. I tell you that. It was not easy.
Oh yeah. There were some hard questions. I was like, whoa, I don't know that. But yeah, so let's jump right into it. Before we get into the full spoilers, I do want to bring out two pieces of news that came out. One being that, which seemed kind of obvious, is that Amy Pascal had confirmed that a live-action Miles Morales is coming soon, presumably in Spider-Man 4, which seemed kind of obvious. But now we got official confirmation. So if you were scratching your itch, be like, oh my gosh, when is Miles coming to live action? There you go. And the second one is that there's going to be an animated Spider-Woman movie, which seems pretty cool because now we're expanding in this massive animated universe that we got with the Spider-Verse. And obviously Haley Steinfeld with Spider-Gwen has absolutely nailed this role. It's going to be really cool to see, even though we saw a lot of her story here and in the first movie, it's going to be really cool to see her branch out into her film. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think to your point, I feel like all of it was stuff that we sort of already assumed was being developed and was going to come, down the pipeline at some point. I think in terms of a live action Miles Morales, love that. It's great. There were already a lot of theories on how that character could be integrated into the movies that Tom Holland is doing. But my fear now is, and we'll talk about this after the movie, it's like, is it going to be as good as what we're seeing in animation? And I think that there's a lot of expectations that'll be placed on that character. That's not to say that they can't do something extraordinarily well, because we even see in the video games, like that Miles character is also, I think a well-crafted character and really good and really well done. But there's just a lot to live up to now, I think. And so I of course want to see that character in live action, but the expectations are going to be pretty high for casting and for how they can deliver that and integrate it into the story. And then of course, like Spider-Woman stuff, like always here for that, just because, we're seeing the wings really spread with what they can accomplish with Spider-Woman. So the sky's the limit there, I think.
Oh.
Well, we lost Messi,
Yeah,
but
man, Jordan made a good
yeah,
point
Des,
where I
what do
think
you think about all
Miles in
this?
live action has a different kind of pressure than anybody else. A lot of other people had, right? Like when Spider-Man, Toby, Maguire, when Toby comes out with the first Spider-Man, he doesn't have all this these crazy video games going crazy, this animation going crazy. It's literally, in fact, the result of Marvel going downhill, which is why Sony acquires them in the first place. Where it's like, of course, there's pressure because
Yeah.
people are fans of Spider-Man at the time, but not like anything that's happening right now. So I think it's going to be a hard thing, I think, to see through with Miles in live action. It really is. It's a different bar that they've set, and again, not just these movies. The video game Miles is a really good Miles as well, and so it's like, okay, they are two
Yeah.
for two. You know what I mean? Like, what is this third thing going to look like? And so yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
just have a lot of ground to cover and a lot to do. And yeah, Spider-Woman, I'm actually really excited for that, especially Issa Rae. I think she's just tremendous as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fun to be had, but again, the bar has been set high.
Oh yeah. Seems like Messi's still having difficulties, so I'll just keep on going. I 100% agree with you guys because you could do so much with animation that is either very difficult or impossible to do with live action. And having like you said, they're two for two. Like our expectations are already like so high, and especially coming off No Way Home, which a lot of people liked. And I feel like just Marvel in general, anything you introduce, your expectations are already high to begin with, just because we're psychotic like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why we expect too much, but it's having Miles in live action. It's going to be interesting. They do practically always deliver with their casting. So I believe whoever does get cast as Miles is gonna do great. It's just, is the writing and the story gonna be good? And if we do get this live action Miles, is it like continuous with what's going on with this, like the animated version, or is this a whole new Miles? Because I mean that's a lot to go through and
Yeah.
to decide.
Honestly, it
So
seems like Sony brings up a lot of questions that they never choose to answer with that continuity piece. It's like, well, is this connected? How is this, sort of tying in with stuff that we've seen before? Like, I think they're just kind of loosey goosey with it at this point. And there is a question to be had as to whether or not they're going to introduce him first in the Tom Holland movie, or will they take
mhm.
another approach? Like you said, maybe it's a continuation or tied in somehow with what we're seeing with the animated movies. We just don't know. So I'm just very curious as to how they make sense of it all, because they've done and made some choices in the past where it's like, this literally makes no sense. Like if you watch the end of Morbius, it's like, how did we get here? This should not
Zero
connect.
sense.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm curious about that too. How they can tie this all together.
It's crazy to believe Sony made this across like Spider-Verse movies, and then they made Morbius, and you're like, huh, huh.
Something don't add up at all. Something doesn't. The,
so
the math
so
ain't mathing for me.
the math ain't mathin'. Like they're like, okay, if you're a good writer, come here, and then just like the scraps can go to Morbius and Venom. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's really interesting. Um, Crap, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so that's basically going on with Miles and Spider Gwen. There is a writer's strike actually, so apparently Spider-Man 4 is on hold. I'm sure this affects even their plans with possibly like what do they want to do with Miles, and if when do they want to carry that out? Well, there's a writer's strike, so probably be delayed.
Yeah, that part too. And I even wonder with the third Beyond the Spider Verse movie. I feel like a lot of that movie's already in the can in terms of like the writing perspective, so it shouldn't affect the next Spider Verse movie. But there's a lot of details too, where it's like maybe something does get affected that possibly continues this wave of delays that we're sort of saying. So yeah, it's
Mm,
worrisome, but it's I think it's for the right reasons, of course, like just seeing what the writers are fighting
for sure.
for. Hmm.
It's definitely for the right reasons, and I mean, given the overload of content that we've been getting lately. We lost another. You guys are dropping like flies. Given the content that we've been getting lately, it's like maybe having some delays, also for the right reasons, but in another perspective, having some delays to just kind of like chill for a little bit
Yeah,
would be kind of nice. So
totally agree.
that's basically all the news that's going on. And now we're gonna jump right into Spider Verse. I do want to get your guys' first reactions of like, whoa, like what do you guys think? Jordan, what was your first reactions to this movie?
Honestly, I was pretty speechless after watching it, and going into it, I'll say that I knew that there were no post-credit scenes, but even when the credits rolled, I couldn't bring myself to stand up because I just needed to process everything I saw. So we sat there all throughout the credits, not waiting for anything, but just like, let me just soak this in right now because I might have witnessed, for me, one of the greatest film experiences I've had, honestly. And I don't try to over exaggerate things, but sometimes you just know it when you feel it, and I felt it in the moment of watching that movie, that it felt like something special. And as Messi said, you can just tell that there was more of everything. There were more characters, more story, more spider people, of course, more universes to explore. And I think that the team behind the movie just wanted to, it just felt like that they wanted to do something special. I felt like that they were setting out to make something that we have just not experienced before, and that's totally what I got. So I think it was an incredible achievement, and I do think it's certainly already for me, like already in the conversation of like one of the greatest comic book movies that we've gotten. And the conversation between this one and the first one in terms of what is superior, we'll be talking about that for years to come because I think everybody's going to have their preference, but that's how good they are. The fact that we can even have that conversation, I think, says a lot about the quality of this movie. So I just thought it was absolutely phenomenal.
Agreed. Des, what was your first reactions to this?
I pretty much in the same boat. I could not figure out what to say or how to say it at the time. It's such an overwhelming movie that you have to like put your senses together by the end of like, one, did that just happen? Two, like what are we going to do next? Like how, that's what I thought. I was like, how can we possibly
Yep.
have another one coming after this? I said in less than a year. It's like, did y'all really just make this big, massive movie and then just like cut it in half, and then we still have a whole nother half to go, and that half of
Yep.
the movie is that good? Like I just couldn't. It didn't make any sense to me at the time, man. But this really, I think, to me, is a achievement on just so many different fronts, and it's beyond even as crazy of a technical achievement of a movie this is. It's beyond that. It's there's genres being bended and mixed within that movie that are just insane. And so in themes that we're talking about in a Spider-Man movie that we've never talked about, not even just a Spider-Man movie, but an animated movie that have never been
Yeah.
touched or talked about before. And not even the fact that they touch them, but they treat them so well, and they shepherd them so well into the Spider-Verse world, man. So yeah, it's one of the, it's not even one of the best superhero movies. I think it's one of the best movies that I've ever seen, to be honest.
Oh,
It's that
that's
crazy. I
good.
think once you break it down, and it's that crazy. So
No, I 100% agree with all of you guys. This it felt like a gift, almost like the writers and the creators like genuinely put their soul into this movie, and it just felt like this creative gift that none of us have really ever seen to that scale. It reminds me of, even though I was very young, Avatar. The way it's like animate, the way the CGI and stuff like that did to that generation, Into the Spider Verse, and now just going surpassing that with Across the Spider Verse. The animation styles that we got in, and like you were saying, the themes that they were touching, just so perfectly like balanced. It was like a treat. It was just, I was watching it and I'm like, this just seems so delicately like worked on, that everything was just so beautiful about it. I mean, you had the family aspects. I mean, you had touching on where the mom was like saying all these things, and then in her speech, and then you saw it transpire throughout the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. uh like you're saying, the next one comes out in less than a year. What? They had to have
I don't
worked
believe
on
it.
most of this. They had to come out. They're either going to delay it or they
No
had to come out
way.
with most of it already, because I saw this thing right after I saw the movie where it said for Spider-Punk they took 2 to 3 years for that animation of Spider-Punk.
Oh my
Is
gosh.
what the one of the creators said. I'm like, 2 to 3 years for one character, yo, and you're gonna add more characters in Beyond the Spider-Verse. I mean, I don't know how you already add more beyond what you just saw now, but it's like, wow, like this movie felt like a treat, and I genuinely liked it more than Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse, I like the movie, but I wasn't as high on it as other people. I wasn't hating, I just wasn't as high on it, and I think the reason for that is because sometimes I get a little bit of a headache looking at the animation. I think it's beautiful, but
Mm-hmm.
for some reason it just gives me a little bit of a headache because it's messing with my senses. I don't know, maybe because I've never visually seen it in a movie, but it just messes with my senses a little bit. But Across the Spider-Verse was just beautiful from start to end. All the different animation, and none of it looked bad. Not a single animation
No.
thing that we got looked off,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy because there's movies that have one style. They only got to work on one style, whether it's live action or animated, and it looks bad. I'm like, these people are working on like hundreds of different styles, and it looks all good. So it was really cool. I was very excited for it, and now we're just gonna jump right into these spoilers. So just take me through your guys's like walk through the movie of like the beginning of the movie where we have this story with Spider Gwen, and Miles comes back, and kind of like they're together, and the whole family aspect with the dad. What do you guys think of all that?
So I think, I knew that this was going to be sort of a wild experience when we got a 20-minute sort of prologue with Gwen, and there was no Miles at all.
Mm.
Like we didn't see him at all until after like the opening credit sequence, and so that already signaled to me like, okay, they're going after something really really big here, and it makes sense as to why we will not resolve Miles' story by the end of this movie, because they are focusing so much on Gwen. I think that her story was mostly wrapped up here, just based off of like where she started with her father, and then of
Right.
course where they ended off at. But I thought that just seeing that play out and just like resting in that moment for so long was really really important to see the chase that her father was, sort of undertaking to find out who Spider-Woman was and apprehend her, and also just like the conflict within her to deal with that. And then just to explore her world and just kind of live with that, and see all the crazy stuff that was happening. We had an Italian Renaissance vulture, sort of pop up, and it's like, wait, what? Like, where is this guy coming from? And all of that stuff was just incredible. And then that leads into the story with Miles, and we pick up with where he's been over the past year, being Spider-Man. And I just love, well, one thing I love about Spider-Man as a character is the fact that we can focus on him just being that community neighborhood hero. And that's what we got to see with Miles in the
Mm.
beginning. Like him just being a normal superhero, dealing with the villain of the week, and just sort of like stopping these petty small crimes, like people stealing shoes or
Yeah.
just, robbing bodegas. Like that's the stuff that makes Spider-Man special. He's not always out to save the world. He's just trying to look out for the neighborhood. So the whole beginning and the whole setup I thought was just really, really well done. And it got me totally bought in to everything we were going to see.
It was awesome because it was like this. It's like this day-to-day basis for him. Like he's on his way to go, whatever it is, pick up a cake or go to school or whatever. He's like, all right, let me go do this real quick. And he's like, it's like minor things. It's not this major villain that he's dealing with. And like you were saying with the prologue, it's I genuinely wasn't expecting it. I thought they were going to pick off
No.
right from where Spider-Gwen comes out of the ceiling, and then we had this whole prologue, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting like way to go with this. I thought it was pretty cool. What do you think, Des?
Yeah, it's so impressive to go from the end of Into the Spider Verse to where they find that scene in the end of Into the Spider Verse into this movie, and it's crazy. It's like what 30 minutes until you get there. It's kind of
Yep.
wild, but I love that they started with Gwen. It's it just worked so well because again, by the end of it, you're like, well, they wrapped her story up really well. Now it's like, okay, we have
Really
another
good.
story to wrap up. It just make it's low key just so much genius things happening. But not only that, everything with Gwen kind of I love how it like previews the movie a little bit of Miles because everything Gwen's going through is kind of what Miles is going through, and that's like the
Yeah.
point. And I think that's so well handled. Not only that, but you can also see the parallels with Gwen in her life, whether it's how funny Spider-Man are supposed to be, the weird problems that she has to deal with. I love seeing her version of Peter, and everything that transpired with that, and how poised Gwen is. I think it's just really we don't get to see her. I think by herself in the suit a lot, and we got that moment to really learn a little bit more about her, and I appreciate that. Not only that, but I was like, even in those first minutes with Gwen, I was like, this score is about to be ridiculous. Because how can we possibly be starting the movie like this? This is how we're starting the movie musically. What does the rest of the movie have in store? Because even just the Gwen part was like, no, you've already done it. They made a Spider-Man movie in 20 minutes with just Gwen. And
Yo, you're not
yeah,
kidding.
and I was like, wow, y'all really killing this right now. So yeah, I loved everything coming up into that. And oh man, one of the I think a really cool start for Miles in this movie. The dude just like microwave, what was it, like a beef patty or something? Like,
In the
Yeah, yeah,
bodega,
yeah.
yeah.
A hot pocket.
and I was like, yeah, this dude is really about to. That's exactly what a Spider-Man would do. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just really like seeing those parallels between the Spider-Man. Really, of course, throughout the movie, but like I was like, dang, this is a really cool way to start the movie. I think again, especially it's funny because it's like, dang, we know Gwen, but what are the specifics? And that goes on to transpire throughout the other movie. We learn about canon events and how similar the Spider-Man are. And it's like, yeah, they were doing something different here. So yeah, I thought it was a amazing start to a movie.
They knew what they were doing. I mean, with the like you said, the music. Oh my gosh, and we were all hype about the soundtrack in the first one, and I was like, what are it's kind of like how Guardians, like every Guardians movie, like we're excited about the soundtrack. Like, bro, how are they gonna top this soundtrack? And then they just get another soundtrack. And it was the same way with Into the Spider Verse. You saw this. We were getting the music during Gwen's story, and we're like, oh, it's time. We in for a ride. Oh yeah. But I love what you said about Gwen showing how poised she was, and through the movie, you saw that more. I loved that. It was different because like all the Spider-Men are unique in their own way, and Spider Gwen was a quote unquote main character of this sequels, and so having knowing more about her and kind of just seeing the difference between her, but also like the similarities story wise with everyone else was honestly it was really cool. Just because she's ultimately she's a kid. They're all kids. They're in high school. I mean, for the most part. I mean, there's you got baby daddy Spider Man, but we're talking about Spider Gwen and Miles. They're kids,
Right.
and I love when movies ultimately show what they are. It makes me think of the animated Ninja Turtle movies that's coming out, and it's like those are teenage people, and that's how if you're gonna portray people as a certain age, then portray them as a certain age because ultimately this is how we want to. The reason why we like superhero movies and comic book movies is because we like in our own little head we put ourselves in those shoes,
Yeah.
like where we are we're like, man, that's me, and or something like that. So it's cool to see those the different personalities between them. Messi, what do you think of this like introduction to the movie, if you can hear me? They did. It was a completely different scene than what the trailer was. You're a hater. You're a hater.
Can we have it all?
We
Can we get
need
all the gifts? You know.
yeah. Why can't we have both? No, I agree. And uh, one of the things that you said was that it was heavily focused on Gwen in this movie. And I think of the first movie, how it was heavily focused on Miles for obvious reasons. But we still got a lot of Miles like storytelling in this movie and shifting in what like how he experienced the other spider because he had such high like beliefs when he was going into this universe. He's like, man, maybe I can prove myself to them and something like that. And I'm sure when he saw the baby daddy Spider-Man, he's like, oh my gosh, like even he's here, like this is so cool. But then they're all going for him, no one, he quote unquote doesn't belong there. And he's like, this is going to be a big mentality shift and growing up moment that we'll see in Beyond the Spider-Verse. So I think you're going to see a heavy shift in not as much Gwen storytelling because her arc kind of low key kind of finished in this movie, which is interesting. But yeah, I agree with that. So going further into the movie, we have Miles now going into this our I don't know universe of all the Spider-Man being together. We see all these different things: PS4 Spider-Man, TV show Spider-Man, all the Spider-Man. We got Andy Samberg. Is that his name?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Andy Samberg. I was blanking for a second. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I forgot the name at the moment. Andy Samberg, Spider-Man. We got all these things. Indian Spider-Man, which we didn't even talk about yet, but it was so cool seeing multiple designs at the same moment because it's I'm not a creator, but I would imagine it's easier to do different designs when that's the only design that you're seeing on the screen or like style. But when you're getting different, like I don't know, people looking different all in one frame, I imagine that's got to be a lot more difficult. And we even got spoilers, live action person in this movie, which I did say someone would come in live action. Not who I thought it would be, but I did say someone would come in live action, which Messi didn't like that. But yeah, what do you guys think of the whole, basically that whole segment of the movie when he's in the universe? They're talking to Miguel. Now he's being chased with this crazy animated chase scene. Just what do you guys think of all that?
I honestly, it was really overwhelming. To your point, you're just seeing so much happen from a technical standpoint, but also just from like a fan standpoint. Like you're trying to make sure you catch everything, and there's really no way to, especially on the first viewing. Like you'll have to watch an Easter egg video or go and pause the movie when we're able to like buy it on digital or whatever. But there's just so much happening, and you have certain characters where like their frame rate is like reduced just so that you can get that glitch effect. Like Spider-Punk, like you
Yeah.
said, his movement is totally different than everybody else's. He's moving slower, and then there's even the moment where you see the original animated series Spider-Man, pop up while they're chasing Miles, but he can't chase him because he doesn't have enough frames to keep up with the chase. Like he's literally probably working on like 8 frames a second. It's small stuff like that where it's like, what are they doing here? Like this is kind of beyond anything we've ever experienced. And so it was a really overwhelming experience, but in all the best ways, because even though we were getting like a ton of cameos, it never felt like it was fan service. Like it all felt like it really was in service of the story that they were trying to tell. Like, yes, we are paying tribute to 60 years of Spider-Man history here, and we do have some surprises that are for people that are really tapped into this culture, into this idea of like Spider-Man as a character across live action, animation, so on and so forth. But we never lose focus of why we're there, and that's to ultimately discover what's the purpose of Miles, what is his place in all of this. And I think that they always kept that focus on him as a character, so it made the action and all the crazy sequences mean that much more.
Yeah, Des.
Yeah, it was just what a treat, I think, for young Dez, who knew a ton of those Spider-Man, those Spider people that was in there, man, but also the ones that they created specifically for this. You know what I mean? There's a ton of Spider people that they just made. The so many artists worked on this movie, and I can just imagine how many artists just worked on a random Spider person in the back
Yeah.
that somebody was going to point out later on that really never existed. You know what I mean? I think that's also cool. And also the point of Spider-Verse. I think they already prepared us for the moment to see all these Spider people. They're like, once you see them, you're excited, but you're like, okay, but I'm still here for the story. You know what I mean? And I'm still here for Miles and for Gwen and to figure out what's also going on here. But I really love those moments to say, oh shoot, is that Ben Reilly? Is that Scarlet Spider? And it's funny because it is Andy Samberg. You're like, what the heck? What's going on here? And so I love how they tried to pay attention, I think, to the spiders that we knew the most, if that makes sense. They gave them those flashes and then kept the other people we didn't know that much kind of in the background, but still glimpses of greatness that came with those spider people. But man, I think that's also achievement of a moment. I think is seeing Spider HQ, is seeing how dark Miguel O'Hara is about to get. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to talk about it real quick, bro. But the end of the chase, where Miguel is just giving it to Miles, like I just didn't see it coming. It was just amazing because that's when
Oh yeah.
you already knew, we already felt the movie was going to get dark in some way, but like he was giving it to him. He was tearing them apart. And it's Oscar Isaac, man. It's just that dude's just talented. He really is. I think me and Jordan actually talk about a lot of times where like when it comes to voice acting, live action actors usually just do an okay job. You know what I mean? They do a fine job, but that boy was voice acting. Like Oscar Isaac was kind of
Oh
going
yeah.
crazy on Spider-Man in 2099. Miguel gave it to us, and I think it was one of those moments where just acting showed through the movie. Was that Spider-Verse or Spider HQ scene in general? Everybody. One thing I want to add too: the Spider Punk. The dude was animated so crazy. Like if he's not moving at all. There's a square around his guitar that is constantly moving. He's not doing anything, but the square is moving. And I'm like, that actually takes work, like to be able to do stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Where like this dude is being animated without even moving, like
Without
without being
even
animated.
moving.
It's just it's small stuff like that. I was like, yeah, they killed this movie. Whatever they're doing, they need to keep doing it. This can't end. I know that, but yeah, it's an achievement, man. It is.
Messi. I don't know if you can hear me. Messi. He probably can't hear me. It's fine. No, I this was probably the biggest part of the film when they're in that spider universe. I don't know what it's called, but we're in that spider universe because you have this massive chase scene where all of them are there. You're overloaded. You're overloaded with seeing all these Spider-Man, and you're us as fans instead of just like casual people. We're like looking at every single piece of the screen trying to figure out like what Spider-Man are in there, and so you're like going all over the place and you're getting all these imageries. It's like overloaded senses, but in a good way. And we got Donald Glover in live action. We
Oh
quote unquote
my
got
god.
Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in live
The
action.
archival footage versions of them,
The archival footage of them, and just seeing Messi had predicted this. I personally I didn't, but Messi had predicted that what would be the reason as to why Miles is getting chased and quote unquote doesn't belong. And I guess he was right. Supposedly, I don't remember him predicting, but he said he did. That was really cool because like I said, I didn't think that was going to be the case, but them saying as to why, like, hey, you're not one of us. Like, it was an accident. You're an accident. You don't belong here. All these things, and you're like, well, first off, you're like, damn, like, take it easy on the kid. So, secondly, you're like, oh shoot. But then he bested all these Spider-Man. These Spider-Man, for some of them have probably been Spider-Man for years, decades, and he bested all of them, kind of proving he's quote unquote the best Spider-Man because he's better than all of them in a sense. Even bested Miguel O'Hara, who's like the leader of all the Spider-Man. So it was really cool. I want to know what you guys thought of, first off, the live action quote unquote moments, and if you guys wanted something different with that, and two, what do you think of the reason why Miles was getting chased and like the purpose of that going within the story?
Yeah. So with the live action stuff, two things with that. Firstly, with what we got, I thought it was great. You know, the first moment with Mrs. Chen, you know, going into the Venomverse, that was like a nice tease. But I felt like we all suspected that something bigger would come, like in terms of live action. And I had suspected, like, is Tom Holland gonna like pop up here? Like, is that what they're going for? Never suspected Donald Glover as the Prowler, which I think is a much better surprise, if I'm being honest, just because I just don't imagine anybody would have predicted that. If you did, then kudos to you, because that is impressive to predict something like that, because that was kept under wraps from what I know. And I think it was great. It's a great tribute to him, just because of really how responsible Donald Glover is for kind of a lot of this inadvertently. I think that we've seen the parallels of people wanting him to be Miles, and, you know, him, you know, sort of having a lot to do with Spider-Man history over the years, just because of, you know, what he did on Community all those years ago. And then for them to sort of pay that off in their own cheeky way all these years later was really dope. I thought it was just a great way to, you know, sort of bring that full circle, even if we don't get more of him in that capacity. And then to go to the point about Miles being chased, I just, what I thought was fascinating was the fact that they held on to that for pretty much the entire movie, that we didn't really understand and get the plot revealed to us until the third act of the movie, which is why they broke this up into two parts really anyway, because it is such a big story. They had to do a lot of setup, and yeah, it's a really massive sort of story that they're trying to tell here. And so when you find that out at the end, it's pretty heartbreaking. But it also makes me suspect, and I don't know if we'll do theories about the next movie at some point, but, you know, it starts to get the wheels turning for me about his place in all this for the third movie, and ultimately what will happen, because they do reference him as this anomaly. And I think if you look at like other films where there's like anomalies, and you know, people coming in disrupting the status quo, there's pretty much like always kind of a universal outcome. But I'll be interested to see where they take that with the next movie. But yeah, that moment of getting that news and information revealed to him by Miguel was probably my favorite moment. Just like the emotional impact of that, and seeing these canon events take place, and everybody around Miles just saying like, this is kind of a part of the gig, man. Like, you have to ultimately sacrifice something really, really important and close to you to realize your full potential. So it's heartbreaking in kind of the best ways, because you root for Miles still, but you also understand that he is a part of something, you know, really bigger than himself.
Yeah, and like the whole moment where he's like, you knew, and they're like, yeah, we just did. I was like, that was just right in the
Right in the heart.
heartstrings. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that was tough.
Oh
Jez,
man.
what do you think of all this stuff?
Yeah, it's such a good story, man. There's just so much here where, you know, Jordan kind of talked about how Miguel was saying, you know, how Miles, you got to lose somebody close to you. Like that is how the thing works. But there's the whole other story where, again, Miguel is explaining to this dude, like, you're the anomaly and you're the first anomaly. And it's such a good story because, you know, you said it earlier, Danny, where Rio had kind of laid out this entire plot. Like, everybody's not going to accept you. Everybody just make sure you remember where home is. And not only does he go through all this turmoil, he literally ends up at home. It's not the home he wanted to be, but he literally ends up at home. And it's this thing though that's bigger, I think. Again, overarching theme where it's like, it's crazy that out of all of this and all of these spider people, again, not to get too crazy here, but Miles is the black one. You know what I mean? Miles is, and she's like, everybody's not gonna root for you, like we gonna root for you, take care of you, like we take care of you. And then he finds this community of spider people, and they're like, yeah, but you're the anomaly. You're not even supposed to be here. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things to break down there. I can't wait to break down eventually, but it's like, wow, this is the route we're going in this story, where you're telling the Black Spider-Man he doesn't belong, or this community of people is telling him he doesn't belong, or he's not even supposed to be Spider-Man in the first place.
Yeah,
that's some dark and deep stuff on top of everything Jordan was talking about, where it's like, you also have to lose somebody close to you, which in this case happens to be your father. As Miles Morales, you have just got hit with two of the biggest bricks ever in like your entire life. People are telling you you're not supposed to exist, and your father is about to die. Oh wow, okay, we're in a different stratosphere of what this story is about to be. I understand kind of where we're going now. And like Jordan said, they really wait to that moment to tell you, like, this is the plot of the movie. It's like, wow, this is definitely a part one, but I do not care. This is amazing. Let's keep going. What else is coming at us, man? And so, yeah, it's just, it really is a lot, I think, to chew on, but it's deep, man. And I love it for that. I really do.
That was perfectly well said. Because like you said at the very beginning of this podcast, the underlying themes and that are within this movie, that yeah, it's a comic book movie and superhero movie, but there's important like details to us as people as a society that's like we don't see in these type of films. So having that, it's like having that, but in something that you love is cool, and it's like deep. It's deep, really. I thank the creators for doing such, not just taking this in a lighthearted way of just comics, but putting it in, as I was saying before, like in our shoes of as people of all different walks of life. So it's like it's cool to be able to for people to be able to relate to those type of things and to see the struggles that happen in society, unfortunately, for like that type of stuff. One thing that, well, I'll go with this. What did you guys think of Spot? Because I mean, we're going through this whole movie, even though he's technically the main villain, and we haven't even talked about Spot yet. What do you guys think of Spot and kind of like his quote unquote arc, and how he even became Spot? Like that, I had originally guessed, I was totally wrong, but I had guessed that he was a variant of Spider-Man because Amy Pascal, or like the creators or whatever, said that him and Spider-Man were connected in some unique way, and I was like, oh, is he a variant? That's completely wrong. But what do you guys think of Spot as a villain?
So what's interesting, I think, about Spot is that we will probably never see that character in live action, just because of like how weird and almost just nonsensical he is as a villain. It's like, how do you make sense of that in the real world, quote unquote? So the idea that they were able to translate him into animation and make him as threatening as he will be, as we saw, I think by the end of this, is it's really impressive that they can take such a probably D-list character and say like, yeah, he's now going to be like the biggest threat in Miles's life, or at least one of them, because that next movie is, you know, sort of setting up multiple villains. But I think, you know, Jason Schwartzman voicing him was incredible. I didn't realize Jason Schwartzman was in this movie, but I heard the voice and I'm like, I know that voice. Who is that? And it wasn't until the end credits, it's like, oh, okay, that makes a ton of sense. And I thought he was incredible. But just like how we go from him being this, you know, unassuming, you know, just character who you can't even make out his face, and all this weird stuff is happening and he's robbing ATMs, to by the end of it, it's like, well, wait a second here. He's after something like really, really dark and sinister. Like, this guy is capable of a lot here. And I think that they unlocked that earlier on in the movie when you realize that he can just like travel to any university he wants to based on his abilities. And that's when you see like, okay, this is a dangerous character. This is somebody who's capable of like quite a lot of destruction and damage if he chooses to, which is obviously like what they're going for. So there wasn't a ton of him in the movie. Like once we got to the Miles stuff, I think in the middle, they had to, you know, sort of take away the focus from him. But I think that that's like totally fine, because the next movie is going to really be focused on him. And then of course, like the other stuff that we see by the end of this with the other universe that Miles ends up with. But I think it's a great character to explore just in this type of world and within animation, because I don't know if we would have gotten that opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah. Des?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, across the board, where he's just such a weird character, but they made him look so cool though too. You know what I mean? They gave him a lot of different animation styles as well. You know, we've seen a lot of different ways that he looked. And again, by the end, once he gets his interdimensional life together, he's like fully black in this like color penciled, crazy, splotchy black look. And it's like, this dude is scary. And what I actually really like about Spot in this movie is that he grows with the plot, if that makes sense. Like, and he has the probably like the lowest floor for a villain and the highest ceiling, really, of like any villain we've ever seen in a lot of ways. Where like you first see him in the bodega, you're like, this dude, there's no way we can take him
he was like
seriously,
low
you
key
know?
a joke.
And it goes with, he was a joke, right? And to be honest, when you first see him, he doesn't feel like villain of the week. He's like villain of the day for a second. It's like, this dude cannot, because he's so funny though. You know what I mean? He's so silly in that way, but he grows. I think a lot of the best villains are like that, right? Where like Thanos came out swinging, right? But he gets more powerful throughout the film, and that's what makes him even so crazy. Spot. What I mean is his that's what I mean. His floor is low though. We don't see Spot as Thanos at the beginning of this movie. You know what I mean? He's way below that. He's villain of the week. But he grows into like, okay, this dude is an interdimensional being now. That is, I just love how he grows with the plot in that way, because it's like, it's almost like he grew with Miles's problems. He's going through all these transformations the same way that Miles is going through all these realizations in the world. And I love how by the end of it, now Spot has grown so strong. You don't have to do any more development for Spot per se. Now he can just go be a villain while we have a whole nother movie to shoot too with Miles. And now it's just, I think he was really well done and really well crafted, because not only that, they use him as a device to bring back, or to bring the makeshift team of Spider-Man, India, Spider-Punk, Gwen, Spider-Bite, like, and a lot of that is because of Spot. And he didn't have to be the most powerful thing in the beginning for them to get there. So I really love the way I think they handled that character overall to make him fit in the story so well. And yeah, it's they did a good job.
Exactly what you said. The fact that he grew with Miles's issues, that was so perfectly said, because it's exactly what you saw. Because in the beginning, in the bodega, you're just laughing, like the way he was saying stuff and the comments he was making, and he literally couldn't control himself. Like, he's like, oh, whoops, oh, that's my foot, my bad. Like, ultimately, he kicked himself into himself because of how like uncontrollable he is. Like, he cannot control himself, and now he's this terrifying villain that we're about to see unleashed in Beyond the Spider-Verse. So I just loved how that progression, as you were saying. Something that I think was really cool was, as Jordan said, we didn't really see a lot of Spot for the most part. Like we saw him in the beginning, the beginning third, and maybe a little bit at the end, but it was like we didn't really see Spot for the most part. But we felt like we got his story and like character arc, and I think those are the little things that as writers, creators, uh, put into a film that like show the care of what the film means to them, because it's not like, oh, we got to throw all this in, because there's a lot going in this movie, and they could have been like, okay, we got to put more Spot, we got to do all this, but it's like if you craft it in a certain way, you don't need so much footage of certain things or so much dialogue of certain things. Like we got Spider-Gwen whole character arc finished in this movie, and she technically wasn't the main character. Like you saw elements in the movie that didn't have to be overused per se, just to get to a certain end game, but still delivered well. Now we're kind of going into this last third of the movie where Miles, he goes back to his Spider's universe, and which was, oh my gosh, that was crazy. But well, he goes back to his Spider's universe, and she's like, "Who the hell is Spider-Man?" And he thinks he's joking. Spider-Gwen gets her character arc wrapped, as we've been saying. Miguel and all them are like looking for him to stop him. We see Spot finally in like his final form, possibly, and kind of like this whole end game where it's like this is wrapping up, but at least as first time viewers, you're like, is this scene the end? Like there was certain parts where I was like, are they gonna end it here?
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kept on going. I was like, are they gonna end it here? And then they just kept on going. And then you're like, but you also didn't want it to end. You're like, please, I need more. It's gonna be so tough having to wait. It's like when Infinity War came out and it ended the way it ended. You're like, no, I need more. Like, please don't do this to me.
Right.
Just splitting a movie in half like that with the end that ends the way it is, and you're like, no. So what do you guys think of this final third of the movie?
Yeah, coming into any film knowing that it's going to be part one of a two-parter, which I think all of us on this show, we knew that coming into it. I'm surprised at how many people did not know that, though. A lot of people that have like hit me up on the side about this movie, they were like, yeah, I had no idea that this was like a two-parter, so that to be continued at the end of it was simultaneously a surprise, but also sort of a relief as well, that there is like more story to tell. But coming into this type of movie, it always just makes me nervous because I am sitting there wondering like, well, when is this going to stop? Like, when is it going to end? So you're anticipating it. But as you said, Danny, you don't want it to end. And I was just like really, really like nervous about it because the character is in a very perilous predicament. Miles, like him going to an entirely different universe where there is no Spider-Man. It just makes you realize like, okay, the stakes are even raised higher now because he's completely removed from his father who he's gone back to save, but now he's in a universe and he's being held hostage by himself and his uncle, who he presumed to be dead, which he is dead as in his own universe, but in Earth 42 he's not. And then you get the sort of team that's assembled by Gwen, so all of this stuff is happening. So there's just a lot to take in. There's a lot to soak in, and you're realizing like, okay, we're getting to the final stretch here. And I just thought it was done really, really well, just because one problem I have with a lot of movies these days, especially like comic book movies, is that we'll get the big like final battle, and then like the next 2 minutes they just wrap up the movie just really, really quick. Like we're just out of there.
Yeah.
I think Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is like is a key example of like, we just had all this stuff happen and now we're just back in San Francisco and boom, it's the end of the movie.
Dinner.
I hate that. It's like, give us an epilogue, just like we got this prologue that set up everything. Give us time to end this movie properly. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a debate as to whether or not this movie ends on a cliffhanger or not, or if it wraps up. But I think, as we've been saying, it wraps up one element of the story, and that's Gwen's story. It does put a bow on that. But the idea that it will continue is the fact that the rest of it is going to reshift the focus primarily on Miles, because that's where the third act was already heading to begin with, right? And so I think that they achieved what they set out to do from the get-go. They had a massive story to tell, which, if put together, it's going to be like a 5-hour movie. So they were like, we're going to split this up. This makes the most sense to split it up at this particular point, because if we're looking at it, from a sort of traditional structure, like, this is like the worst possible scenario for Miles. He's away from his father, who he knows that he's going to die within a couple of days, but he also can't do anything about it because he's not even in his own universe. So how does he get out of that situation? That's where you leave the character, and you get us to come back for that next one to see how he gets out of this situation, see how he can save his father. So again, just really, really well done. I think it was a great place to stop the story so that we can pick it up for the next edition.
Yeah, Des?
Man, there's so much greatness, I think, in the last act that I was really taken aback by the whole thing. And starting off is really just Miles thinking he's in the right universe, kind of, swinging back home, and everything is happening around him. All the thoughts are coming in. You can see, like, Doc Ock tentacles moving past him. There's trains falling. There's people on sides of buildings. I just have to say, that was beautiful. It was like I was watching, I don't know what, it was really well done. It was crazy how great that moment was, man. Not only that, but I remember watching Into the Spider-Verse. As many times as I've watched it, I keep being like, what is this 42 on this spider? I could, like, not figure it out, because every time he gets bit, I'm like, there's a number on there. We're not going to talk about this number on the hand, or on the back of this spider. It always was like a thing to me that they never called back to. But it's crazy how far ahead they were thinking about this whole thing, for them to put that little tidbit in the first 15-10 minutes of Into the Spider-Verse, with the back of the spider having a 42 on it, into what we have now, to where he's in just crazy. It's really crazy writing when you think about it, because it's just very impressive to go from that to this. It really is. And I kind of already knew he was in another universe too, though, because the colors were so different. And I think that's an important detail, right? Like, if you look at each city where Gwen was, where he was, just the color of the city was different. And Miles's Brooklyn always had a specific color to it. And I was like, that's not the color his Brooklyn usually is. So I love that kind of attention to detail as well, man. But what a crazy way, I think, to come into ending a film where it's not only about his dad anymore. It's like, no, I'm in a universe where no Spider-Man exists. Not only that, but myself in this universe is a villain. What in how, and what does that look like? And what I'm so excited about that are the crazy themes there. Miles is constantly going through trauma, and now he sees his uncle, who he just lost. That's traumatic for anybody. Sure, he hugged him, was like, oh my God, I miss you, blah blah blah, so much. But it's like, that's a traumatic thing, because eventually he's gonna have to go away again, you know what I mean? Or something else is gonna have to happen there, to where he doesn't see his uncle anymore. That's traumatic. That's trauma. And they're gonna have to talk about that. Same way that they're literally staring each other in the eyes at the end. He's staring the evil version, the villain version of himself, in the eyes by the end of this. There's a lot to talk about there, you know what I mean? That's crazy stuff, I think, to kind of think about. And another tidbit that I picked up on was, while he's chained to the bag, right, to the boxing bag, you can hear J. Jonah Jameson talking about the Sinister Six cartel in the background. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're about to get something crazy in this next movie. It's about to be the Sinister Six cartel versus Team Gwen. It's about to be crazy out here. I can't wait to see it. I know it's going to be something ridiculous, but I heard that and I was like, yeah, this is about to be an amazing sequel, to say the least. But yeah, what I actually thought the movie was going to end for a second when he lands into his house, into his room, and he lays down and says, I'm home, because they stop for a second. It's like 5-second pause, until Rio comes in and opens the door. And you're like, okay, maybe they're not ending the movie. That's the moment. At first, I thought they were going to end the movie. Like, ending the movie right here. This is weird, but I love that they were able to play on that because a lot of people will say we didn't feel the runtime or we did. I think by that point where everyone's like, damn, this movie is long, but not for a bad reason, right? We're like, damn, this movie is long. When are they going to end it though? And now they're playing with us at that moment. They're like, you thought we were going to end it. And then they don't. So I really like what they were doing there because you felt the runtime before a reason. Yeah. They like made you feel it for a reason. And I thought that was very well crafted. So yeah, it's I think it's tremendous into a movie. There's some horror in the last 5 minutes that some of the best horror I've seen in years in those last 5 minutes, but it was good, man.
The ending was gotta be probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Just because everything that you were getting and the parallels that you were seeing when I loved, like you said, when they were looking at each other, I was like, he's looking at this alternate version of himself who's bad. And the dialogue that was going before that, he's like, no, like you could change. You don't have to be Prowler. And he's like, I'm not. And then Miles comes in, like he sees himself. Shoot, I am Prowler. Like, oh, frick. And just seeing because the way the music was going, and like you were saying, when he was swinging back to his house, it was like this, like franticness in a sense. Like I got to get there like as soon as possible, and he's freaking out. And the rain, what was it? It was raining, I'm pretty sure. In the end, and it's like you feel these stakes, and boom, not even in the same universe, and you're like, oh shit, like you're just freaking out. When Spider-Gwen formed up the original team that we saw in Into the Spider-Verse, when she was like, oh, I don't know where he is, but I know where to start. And you see him and you see her like form up the team, and it's just this beautiful picture of like wrapping it together. Like I know, like Jordan was saying, like some people might say that it didn't end in this proper way for the sequel, but I think it ended perfectly. Like it was just so beautifully crafted. And having Miles, one thing that was like with the whole electricity thing, and you're like, bro, this is about to go down. You heard JJJ in the background. Like this was really cool. I want to know if there was anything that you guys either wanted in this film that didn't happen, or if there was any predictions that you had for this film that did happen.
Oh man, that's, and getting into predictions for this type of movie, it's always that's a game in and of itself, because man, you can just be so wrong. So putting out a prediction is definitely like you're putting yourself out there. But I think in terms of things that didn't happen that I might have wanted, I don't think that there's anything specifically that it really exceeded my expectations. I just did not predict that it would be as great as it was, and perhaps even surpass the first one, which I think it might have for me. I did suspect though that, again, some iteration of the Tom Holland universe, whether it was him or somebody adjacently related to him, would be a part of this movie. But that's not off the table yet. I think that there's still like potential that might happen in the next one. And they might be holding on to something, because the fact that we've gone to like the Venomverse and they got Donald Glover in here, like they are playing with the live action stuff. That just feels like that they might be setting up something more there. It might not even be significant, which I don't expect it to be, because I want it to still be about Miles. But I think that there might still be something there, and how they can, sort of bring the Tom Holland specific universe into this world, because we've literally gotten everything else except him. We've gotten Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, all the animated stuff, the video games, toys. Like the Tom Holland Spider-Man is kind of the only version that wasn't referenced here. And so they just might be saving that for the next one. And he's also like a huge fan of these movies. So I feel like he would totally be on board to just like come in and do something for like a day. So I guess that would be like the one thing that I would expect to see, in the next one.
Yeah. I mean, you said it. Tom Holland even said that Into the Spider-Verse was his favorite Spider-Man film. And we didn't get we didn't get him like it would make sense because we did get Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, but that was like archives. I think whenever they do, if they do bring some sort of version of Tom Holland into Beyond the Spider Verse, that it's not just going to be an archive. It's gonna be like it's gonna be legit stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I like you said, I do think they are saving that. Des, anything you wanted in this movie, or if you had a prediction, you're like it came true, suck it.
My only prediction was seeing, I think, at least some kind of version of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and we got that. I didn't know what capacity. I just had a feeling we'd see them. You know, a lot of the creators of the movie were like, "Oh, there's big surprises," you know, in the movie. Make sure you don't spoil it for other people. I'm like, they're in this movie somehow.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how or what way they'd work them in. I didn't know if they'd be animated. I didn't know what they would do. But I'm glad to see they found a way, I think, to weave them in. I think Donald Glover was a big surprise for me, though.
Sure.
To be honest, I was not expecting that. But as far as predictions and what I wanted to happen goes, I kind of got it. Like the Spider people that were showing us between the Spectacular Spider-Man and even just seeing Spider-Woman, I was excited about. Seeing Ben Reilly, seeing Scarlet Spider, I think was important for me. Seeing a lot of the different spiders, they kind of checked a lot of the boxes that I was here to see. Miguel was a big part of the movie. That's what I wanted to see. You know what I mean? And so they really was checking the boxes that I was searching for. I also was excited about the Spider Cat. I just wanted to see what would happen with Spider Cat. I was like, what is this? What is this thing? But also I was kind of excited to see Mayday too, to see how Peter and Mayday kind of meshed in the movie, because I wasn't sure how they would integrate Mayday into the film, or I just didn't know. I didn't know if because I knew Jessica Drew was in the movie, and I knew, of course, there's versions of Jessica Drew that do marry and have a kid with Peter Parker. I didn't know which one was going to happen. Like, I didn't know if the Peter that we knew was going to be with the Spider-Woman that we know. I was like, wait, what's going on here? But they were different. And so, yeah, it was just cool to see all of those things. I think they gave me what I asked for.
I want to add just quickly too that like one other thing that I don't think anybody would have predicted, but like it feels like it's a fact now, that J.K. Simmons is basically J. Jonah Jameson in every universe. Like, it doesn't matter what universe you're in, it's pretty much him, because we saw him in the Lego universe. It's the same voice. In Earth 42 Lego, at the end, it's the same voice. In the Tom Holland movies, it's always his voice or his likeness. And so I just like that he's the one constant J. Jonah Jameson across everything. But that was cool.
No, you're totally right. I forgot about that. And it's like, that's cool, because I remember when we first heard it in live action, we're like, oh my gosh, like Jaden Jonason's is back. And then now we're getting all these different universes, still the same voice. It's like this refresher that you have. You're like, it's so refreshing to hear his voice as JJJ instead of because we're always getting different voices and different characters for people. So it's cool having a constant, like you said. I totally forgot about the Lego universe. That was cool. Seeing that was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in this movie. Like, I don't know, the way they did that was just so cool, and just seeing Peter to like walk, but it's like, I don't know, there was just something about it that was so cool.
I love when he's at the Bugle and he goes into the bathroom and he's in his Spider-Man outfit and he calls Miguel and he's like, I think we have an anomaly, and Miguel is like, thanks, Peter, you're one of the best of us. And I'm like, the Lego one is one of the best of us.
Of course. All these Spider-Man and the Lego one is the best. Okay. That was super cool. The one thing that I personally did want, and maybe it's just me, but something that I did want to see in this film was a little bit more showcased of Miles's powers. We did see his invisibility in the beginning and when he was trying to get back to his universe. However, I know that in this movie, he wasn't didn't really know how to do the electricity thing when they're like, hey, actually use your whole hand instead of just the fingers. Personally, I just feel like if you've been Spider-Man for a little over a year, you'd at least try it once or a couple times with your whole hand instead of just your fingers. I don't know. I wanted to see the electricity thing be used a little bit more because Miles is different from all these Spider-Man. Like all these Spider-Man, they're just web slingers, and Miles is like he has these special abilities. Um, I just I know this wasn't the first film, so I just wanted to see it showcased a little bit more because now he's kind of coming into his own. He's been Spider-Man for over a year. He's I don't know. It's just something I wanted to see. But
No, that's fair. I think too, with that point, because we know like the electricity is a big component to his character. I feel like that has to play a major role in the next one as well. Like we saw how it started to manifest in this movie, and like Spider Punk was, kind of the guy to let him know like you need to use your whole hand, like you said. And I don't know if it'll play a part in, and I think it might play a part in just like ultimately what he's going to have to do in order to try to save his father. Maybe that power comes into play. Maybe that's how he defeats Spot. I feel like that is the one thing that they're purposely holding back because it feels like there's going to be a big moment with the electricity. It kind of was already in this movie, but I think we know that like he's capable of like it could be even crazier, like what they can do with the electricity. Like there's so much stuff that they can do there. So I feel like that they might have a huge moment, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, there was even like a. It was even interesting how like when he hits Miguel with it, Miguel like deteriorates a little bit, or like
Yeah,
Yeah.
his body kind of starts glitching a little bit. I was like, that's kind of crazy looking. But they did. That is part of the reason he got away though, is using that that shock power. It is the one thing that made him different for him to escape. Freaking hundreds of their spider people. So it's they said something about it, but I think I agree that they'll turn it up in the next one and they'll make it a plot
yeah.
point somewhere.
So this kind of like wraps up the movie portion. I do have a couple questions. One being, what is your overall rating for the movie?
Oh, what we using letters, numbers,
Oh, we
stars?
using on a scale
What
of one
scale
to
is this?
10.
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
1 to 10 is the best way to scale it.
No, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I think I don't even know why I asked
Okay.
because it would have been the top whatever of any scale. I would have said A plus, five
Whatever
stars,
you
10 out of 10.
still says 100.
Yeah, it's really it hit everything for me. I think I really personally have no actual nitpicks with the movie. Like when I really thought about it, like there is nothing I felt like didn't work for me. The one thing that had me apprehensive would have been the runtime. And I think everything we talked about with that, like that could be something to like start to nitpick at and say like, well, maybe it does go a little bit too long. Maybe it could have ended a couple of scenes earlier. But again, just knowing that there's going to be more, knowing that this is half of a story, I think it all makes sense. And so it really, it's the few, or one of the few examples of like a movie that I couldn't really level any criticism against it to make it better. So that's why I would give it a perfect score on any scale, honestly.
Des?
Yeah, 11 out of 10. No, I really think this movie is an achievement. Because you just named something about the movie and they excelled in some way. They didn't just like meet an expectation. They excelled it. Like when I think about animation, it already took years for people to get where Spider-Verse was like this year in terms of animation. And now they pushed it again. And now it's like when you push something, you know what I mean? Like you're literally you're making the rules. You're in Spider-Verse did it again. They pushed it in 2018 with Into the Spider-Verse. They pushed it again with this movie Across the Spider-Verse, and I think it's just amazing. It's just it's crazy that they were able, I think, to pull that off. We talked about the score, pushed it again. How beautiful the score was. Script. I mean, to be able to, I think, have all of these stories melded into one and to treat them all, to take care of them all the correct way is impressive.
Yeah.
they did it. You know what I mean? Like everything they're excelling at, to be able to have a Gwen story and a Miles story and a little bit of a Spider-Man India story in there. You know what I mean? A little bit of a story about Spot is in there. There's a Miguel O'Hara story in this movie. Like they're doing it. You know what I mean? And they're doing it so well. And so again, there's just nothing about this film for me that feels like it's not an achievement, or it's not that good of a movie. And yeah, it's that good, man. It really is to me. So it's yeah.
I agree. I concur with everything you guys said. It was an achievement. It set a bar. It set a standard. Uh, well, technically, it raised the standard, but for the rest of the movie industry, it set the standard again. Like you said, with Into the Spider Verse, and now the fact I genuinely couldn't believe how they could have made animation better from the first one, because it was so unique and so special. When this one came out, it's like it's probably going to be the same thing, but they really raised it, and I was like, what? Huh? And everyone is behind the curve now. Like now you're kind of getting Ninja Turtles with the same animation. The second Puss in Boots was kind of was similar to that animation. Now people are like trying to get there, but no one's close. No one is close to that level
Exactly.
of like just style. So that to me is what I came away most with this movie, and what I came away most with the first one. But I was like, there's no way they could do it again. But then and they did it again. I really love this movie. They excelled in so many ways, and we even got a Peter B. Parker story, more going more into than what we got in the first one. So it's really cool.
Exactly.
I don't know how they're going to come out with with the third one in less than a year. I think it was scheduled for March 24, which that's less than a year.
I can't
No
see
way.
it.
No way.
I just cannot see it. I felt I kept
No
reading
way.
stories about they were working on this movie Across the Spiderverse literally until like a couple of weeks ago. Like this came down to the absolute
The
wire
Wire.
in terms of like actually locking the picture, just because of the massive
They're
amount of
gonna
work.
push
And
it back.
I think just considering how long it took to get to this one, the fact that like they've aimed for like 9 months from now we're going to get the third one.
Mhm.
I'd be willing to bet money that that doesn't happen, but that's for good reasons. That's for good reasons to say like you should probably delay it to get it to the place that it
Mhm.
needs to be, even if it's like till next fall. I'd be totally fine with that because we know it's going to be worth it.
Same.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Last question is: out of all these Spider-Man movies that we've gotten, I believe we have um, 9 or 10 films. What is your favorite Spider-Man movie out of all of these?
Wow, I mean, recency bias is a thing. I just want to put that out there.
It is. It
um,
is.
I'm
You're
just gonna
100%
I'm just
right.
gonna
It
start with that.
is.
Um, I don't know how it's not this one. I don't know how it's not Across the Spider-Verse for me. I've already been thinking about this, and it was Into the Spider-Verse, before this, and the fact that I'm even having the internal conversation that Across the Spider-Verse probably exceeded that first movie, by default would make it probably my favorite. But also, I do have like a special place for those first two Tobey Maguire films. I love those movies so much. They were coming out in my formative years. Like those were the Spider-Man movies that hit when I was when I was
Mhm.
young. And most recently, No Way Home did something really, really special. But if I'm just looking at the total package of a movie from a creative perspective, a story perspective, character, the stakes, and the significance of Spider-Man lineage and history that gets folded and wrapped up into everything that we're seeing. I mean, no movie did it like this one. No movie did it like Across the Spider-Verse, because we're talking about a character that's been around for 60 years and is, I think undoubtedly the most popular superhero in the world in terms of like an individual
Mhm.
hero. And you have a team coming into this movie making probably the best iteration of the character or characters that we've ever gotten in any medium. Um, That's special, and we're actually kind of living through, I think, a historical moment that sometimes we don't even fully appreciate while we're in it. And so when we look back on this in 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to be like, yo, that was different. That was something like entirely, we haven't seen anything like that since. And so I think look, right now I think it is this movie, Across the Spider-Verse. I can't wait until it comes out on 4K digital, all that stuff. I'm going to watch this thing so much, like all the time in the background when I'm
Yep,
working. Like it's gonna just
it's
be
gonna be
playing
bad.
all the time, just because of how good it is, and I think how much replay value it'll have in the future. So it'll be this one for at least the time being.
This.
Yeah. I, man, Miles Morales has had I think a special place for me for a while now. I got some Miles comics. I probably need to get rid of
Oh
at this
yeah.
point. Like I need to box them things up and yeah, and keep them in the vault because this dude is blowing up. But I've always had a special place for Miles in my heart, and I think I even had some bias in that direction. But with Jordan though, those first two Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, man, they came at just such a different pivotal time in my life that I have to at least hold on to them in some form or fashion. You know what I mean? Like I still have to have those and I hold them close to the chest. But this movie here, this Miles Morales story that we're getting, it's not it it's again, it's not only just one of the best Spider things ever. I think it really is just when I go down the board, I'm like, dang, this might be one of the best animation things I've ever seen. This might be one of the best coming of age things I've ever seen. This might be one of the best movies just I've ever seen. And when I start talking about it and thinking about it like that, I'm like, man, this is just different. Like Across the Spider-Verse is just different. And I agree, recency bias is the thing, but I don't know. Like I know how I felt after all of these Spider movies. Shoot, No Way Home, I was lit. I kept walking out there. I was like, this movie is amazing. Into the Spider-Verse was the same way, but the way me and Jordan were like, I didn't have words yet. Like I couldn't really articulate what I wanted to say yet. In the cert, it was just a different experience, and I think I know how I feel, and I think it has to be Across the Spider-Verse, man. It really does. I think this is my favorite Spider movie. I really do.
Well, I'm going to say my opinion. I have two answers because I think to me it goes in what I think is genuinely the best film and what I just enjoyed more. Personally, I think because of all this nostalgia and stuff, I enjoyed No Way Home the best out of all the films just because I don't know. I was just the hype I felt when Andrew and Toby walked in. I was like, oh my God. Seeing the Sinister Six, yeah, well, not Sinister Six, but seeing these characters back again that we grew up loving, that to me was my hype level. So that was like my favorite movie. But what I think is the best Spider-Man movie is this film for all the reasons that you guys said. The story, the writing, the animation. This was a historic moment. That we're all of us are going to look back on, like Jordan said. There was no movie so perfectly crafted in such a way that they did this one, and even Into the Spider-Verse, that even movies outside of this genre can't live up to. So I do think that this is the best Spider-Man film. I will say that I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so this was, I think, the best Spider-Man film. I remember what I was gonna say is I think similar to what Des was saying, where I think this is just a prediction. Maybe it's a hot take. I don't know. But I think a couple decades we look from now, maybe 30 years from now, more people are going to remember Miles than they did Spider-Man. I think we're Miles is a very recent character. In the comics, he didn't come out till maybe 10, 20 years ago. And now we're getting all these Miles stuff, Miles in the video games, Miles in live action supposedly now, Miles in animation. Like this is what this generation is now growing up with. Like, yes, we still got Spider. We're still getting Spider-Man, Peter Spider-Man specifically, but we're now growing up with Miles. The kids that are under us, our age, are growing up with Miles, I think that in a couple decades from now, he's gonna be the face of Spider-Man versus Peter Parker, and I think that's awesome. It's really unique because it's a historical shift, and I just love that. I think it's so unique and so cool, that we're now gonna be remembering a new superhero as a face of a character that has been loved for generations. So maybe it's a hot take. I don't know, but I that's just my prediction. I think it'd be really cool. So that's all I have to say. I do want to give you guys a chance to again to kind of just say where to find your stuff, all that to the audience, and yeah.
For sure.
If you guys would even want to promote your own Instagrams, whatever it is.
Yeah, no doubt. But no, thank you again, Danny, for having us on, and Messi as well. This was a great conversation. We are on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, of course, and others. Two Black Nerds, the number 2. That is important to remember, not TWO, but the number 2. You can find us. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. We have TikTok. We have IG. Find us anywhere on socials. We're definitely always trying to have conversations and engage with listeners and friends and people of the podcast. And we're actually going to be coming back. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the past couple of weeks to just take a little bit of a break, but we'll be back next week, or later this week, I should say, to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. We're going to be talking about this movie a lot. So we have a lot to get to and much more to talk about as it relates to this movie. So can't wait to do that. In terms of like my own personal handle, if you want to follow me, JRW the Creator. Keep unsolicited opinions about movies out of my DMs. I typically don't ask for people's opinions, but they offer them up to me anyway, which, I guess is cool, but keep the conversation friendly, folks. But yeah, you can find me on my personals at JRW the Creator. And yeah, can't wait to get back with Two Black Nerds to keep talking about this movie and all the other stuff coming out the rest of the summer.
Des?
Oh yeah, catch my personals. Twitter is at justdesmundo. Just Desmundo. And my Instagram is at delusional. It's like delusional, but with an A between the D and the E in the beginning. That is me on socials. Oh yeah, and in case anybody wants any Two Black Nerds merch, go to twoblacknerds.com. You can find our merchandise. Right now, our main collection is our Two Black Sith collection is up and going. We have crew necks, stickers, hoodies, mugs, tote bags, all of those things of that sort. And yeah, that's where you can find
Real talk, their merch is fire. I remember when I first came across you guys and I was like, oh, they got merch, let me look at it. And I was just seeing like the different designs. I was like, oh, this is some dope stuff.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, get that merch. It's actually really fire.
Yeah.
I do want to say, on behalf of Unqualified Heroes, of me, I know Messi wasn't here for the podcast, but he was really excited to talk with you guys because we love everything that you guys are doing. So on behalf of all of us, just thank you for coming onto the show and spending a part of your day. We know time is precious, one of the most precious things on earth. So just spending time to talk with us. We love talking with other nerds because we're nerds. And we don't get to talk superhero stuff with a lot of people because like they don't get it like we do. Some people are just casual people.
That's true.
And that's totally okay. So,
yeah.
But to be able to like, I don't know, talk about something that you really love, especially in a movie so great with others is really awesome. So just thank you again. We really appreciate it, and we hope to have you guys back on eventually at some point because it was really cool. And lastly, you can find me on Instagram at Danny42 with 3 N's because 2 was taken when I tried to make an Instagram account. You can follow me as long as you're not a weirdo. You can also follow Messi.17_. If you are a weirdo, you can follow him. He doesn't care. Maybe he does, but he can't say anything right now to say it. So, yeah, follow us, or you can follow our main page, which is Unqualified Heroes. We are on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything that has listening platforms. So go ahead, follow us. It's really great. And just thank you guys for everything. And yeah, this is the end of our show. Unqualified Heroes! Oh. I have to do the voice because Messi's not here. So.